Okay, so we are going to be looking at folder slash directory structure. Folders and directories are the same thing. Okay. I know we may think that because this is not the coding concept. So it's not about logic, it's not about your programming, anything that is going to be less important. But this is actually very, very, very important if you are going to be building maintainable and scalable applications. Okay, because I feel like, well, one thing we do as developers, right, is we kind of underestimate. Let's say underestimate. We kind of underestimate the amount of context, okay, like that we have when we are implementing something. You think that maybe if you come back the next week or next 2 weeks, you will still understand what's going on. Well, you may still understand what's going on, right? But of course, you can't know everything. You may not know where you placed some things. Maybe you need a function, you don't know where it is, or you need a class, you don't know where you placed it. Of course, your IDE can help you for those things, but things have to be consistent. Okay, the time you spend looking for those things you scattered all around will be time that you'll be using to implement a new feature, okay, and improve your productivity. Okay, so this is very, very important concept. I'm going to say that I'm correct. What am I correct about, please? Okay. So let me just start off by saying this, right. In the industry, there is no standard naming convention for your folders. Nobody says your folders must be named this, or your folders must be named that. Okay. Uh, Many people use different things for different projects. Different projects have different needs. Okay. Some apps you might be building might require some kind of integration with third-party services, maybe Google services or Firebase, like we'll be using in our certified application, or any other service. And some apps will not require those things. So you name your folders according to your use cases, right? But there's something that is consistent. There's something that is consistent in folder structuring in the industry. So, and there are two things actually. First is structure your folder based on the features you have in your application, or structure your folder based on the layers you have. Okay, I'll explain what layers mean in a moment, right? Okay, so let me just call it feature first directory structuring and layer first directory structuring. These are two directory structuring models or folder structuring models, right? Okay, so let me start with feature first. Okay, basically, feature first, what it does is you structure each feature. Let's say you're building an application like Certify. We will have certificate generation. Well, let me not use Certify. Okay, let's use something more complex. Let's use an application like Facebook. Okay. So over the top of my head, I can count the number of features that Facebook has. They have their authentication system. Okay. They have their user profile system. Okay. They have their posts or social media posts feature liking system and everything. So you can structure your folder based on these different features. Okay, you have a feature maybe named authentication, which will contain your sign in, sign up, verify password, verify user email, reset password, change password, forgot password, everything that has to do with user authentication. You put it in your authentication feature folder. Okay, this way it helps you separate concerns. This way you will not have to, when you come to maintain or implement a new feature for your application, you will not have to be looking for something that maybe is in profile inside authentication. Okay, so you see the advantage of feature first folder structuring. Okay. For instance, you're looking for a widget, a widget that displays user statistics and dashboard. Okay, maybe you want to really quickly spin it up or another screen or UI. You won't necessarily go and be looking for it, say, authentication folder. Your search focus is kind of narrowed. You know, okay, this is going to likely be in profile. Okay, so this helps, and that's what feature first folder structuring is really all about. Okay, layer. Of course, you're going to be seeing examples. I've kind of opened up my VS Code. I'll be sharing that in a minute, right? Layer first folder structuring is different. Here, you don't structure your folder. You don't name it based on the features you have. You name it based on, well, let's call it technology available or the technologies you are using. Technology is a good fit. No, not really. You structure it based on the concepts in your program. For instance, your program could be using a repository, using a controller to control your UI. You could be using a service to abstract away third-party service integrations, right? So instead of having folders, top parent folders named after features, yeah, you name them after the concept. For instance, you have the repositories folder, you have the controllers folder, you have the services folder, and then of course you have your UI folder, which is just going to be UI components. Yeah, and it's always important to separate your UI.
Hello, sir. Please, we can't see your screen. I don't know if you are
Yes.
showing something.
I can see your screen. Oh, I can see your screen. Maybe it's his network.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Shoni Barry, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I will leave and join. I will rejoin.
Okay, you do that. Okay. And hopefully you join before I go to my VS Code and start showing examples. Okay, so I was talking about the layer first structuring. Okay, so instead of in layer first structuring, instead of naming your folders after the features, you name them after the concepts in your programming. I want your project. And different projects might have different concepts. It's not every project that will need a repository. It's every project that will need a service, things like that. Some projects are more complex than others. Some are simpler than others, right? So you have to this is part of the architecturing phase before you start coding. You have to think about it, arrange things into concepts before you start writing the code. Okay. Um, so you could have repositories, controllers, services, and UI. This is normally this is a normal standard for layer first folder structuring. So you might want to ask me, okay, since we have these two, okay, since you have these two approaches to folder structuring, which one should I use? And now that's a very, very, very good question. So to know the one you would use, you first of all need to understand your project. Okay. Feature first folder structuring is mostly used for large, complex applications. Okay, where a feature can encompass a large number of files. Okay, where a feature could encompass a large number of files, and you don't really want to be going everywhere searching for a file or a piece of code. When you structure them in feature folders, it helps. But if you're building a simple application, the layer first folder structuring might be your best bet or best fit. Okay, you can structure your this thing in there since the number of files in the project is not really that much. So you don't really have to go far and wide to find something you're looking for. Okay, so and using feature first folder structuring in simple application can be an overkill. Okay, it's not necessarily bad. Yeah, it's not necessarily bad, or it can be an overkill. Okay, but it's not necessarily bad. Of course, you can do that. But using layer first folder structuring in a large and complex application, I would say it's bad because as the project grows, as you add more things, it's gonna become like a battle of attrition. If you understand what I mean, it's gonna become harder and harder to maintain because you have to find where things are, you know. So depends on your project and your use case. That's when you choose your folder structuring approach. Okay, so I'll be showing you an example. Actually, I have the certified Flutter project set up, right? It's still an empty project, but I'll be using it to demonstrate feature first and layer first folder structuring. Wait, let me know when you can see my VS Code, please. Okay, so can you see my VS Code?
Yes, you can see it.
All right, thank you very much. So let's quickly discuss the architecture of certifying. I would explain to you what the app does and how to do it, and provide suggestions on how to structure the folder to arrange things right. Okay. Certify is an application for certifying the authenticity of digitally issued certificates. Certify is an application that provides users with the ability to certify or authenticate the authenticity or to validate the authenticity of digitally issued certificates. What do I mean by digitally issued certificates? Talking about certificates that you get from participating in an online program, such as this KodeCamp. When you're done with KodeCamp, you're going to be issued a certificate, right? And of course, it's not a hard copy certificate. It's likely going to be a file, okay? And if you've attended any other bootcamp before this one, or have any program or webinar or something, probably must have been issued a certificate when you were done, right? Now, the problem now is that most of these certificates are files, most times PNG files, image files, or PDFs, right? And the thing is, they're really good designers that can design those things, okay, with Canva or any other design tool. Place those things, place the colors where they are, place the text where they are, and kind of forge a certificate. Okay. And that is not really ideal. And that is not an ideal situation. Think about the organization issuing a certificate. How would they feel? Someone can just forge a certificate. Okay, it's fraud. So we need a way to validate the authenticity of a digitally issued certificate. Okay, and now we are coming up with Certify. So how does Certify do that? So how Certify is going to do that is organizations that issue certificates will come on, sign up on the application, and they have their details on the application. The application is going to give them a unique ID, an ID that uniquely identifies them on the platform. Okay. So now, when they want to issue a certificate, using cryptography mechanisms, so we are going to use that the ID to sign the details of the person that issuing it. Normally have the issuer and the person that is being issued a certificate. You sign the details of the person that being issued a certificate with that organization's ID using cryptographic mechanisms. And when you sign it, you're going to get a string or some value as a result of signing. Okay. Now that string is going to be encoded as a QR code. Okay. And you know, QR codes are images. Okay. So now what the organization will do is when they finish designing the certificate, when their graphic designer finishes designing the certificate, they will now copy that QR code and put in their design. So the essence of this now is that anyone that wants to validate the authenticity or check the authenticity of that certificate is just going to scan that QR code on that certificate from our application. Sorry, scan the QR code with our application, and our application is going to take them to a standalone web page that displays that says whether the certificate is valid or not, and it will show the details of who the certificate is issued to. Remember, we signed the name of the issuee. Let me call it issuee. Person who the certificate issued to. So the web page is going to show us whether the certificate is valid and the details of who the certificate was given to, hereby limiting forgery of certificates. So now that I've explained the problem and I've explained the solution. So we have now in this application we have authentication and user profile, because I said companies or people that issue certificates, organizations are going to sign up, right? So that means we have authentication and account management. Okay, most times these two can be merged into one feature. And now we're going to be using a third-party service, because of course we're going to be saving these QR codes. They are image files, so we need to save them somewhere on the internet where they can be downloaded from. Okay, so that means we're going to be integrating third-party service, and we'll be having signing with cryptographic methods. Probably use, so okay, Ginika, you have a question?
Yes, please. Sorry, I did not get what you said about, is it the company that will find their own graphic designer, design their certificates? So how do they put our QR code on their certificates? I didn't understand that part. Is it that they will scan and upload to the application to give them a QR code?
Okay, no, the company has their own designers. They design the certificates, whatever the certificate is, with the names and everything. That is not our job. Our job is to provide them with a QR code that uniquely validates their certificate. Do you understand?
Okay, the application is only to be generating QR code. So how do they get the QR code?
Okay, they would enter the details of the person. For instance, if I want to issue you a certificate after completion of a program, I would enter your details, your name, and any other information I want to enter. Maybe if you have an ID in my platform, I will also enter that into our application, our certified application. And those details will be signed with a unique key that is unique to the organization that is issuing the certificate. Okay. And the result of signing something is you get a value, you get most likely a string or something. I think we'll use JWT signing. Okay, we're going to use JWT with the key. Okay, so now the result of that signing is going to be encoded into a QR code image. Do you understand now?
Yes, I think I get you now. So yeah, it's like mapping the name to a specific QR code for every name that they upload, right? Map it to a specific QR code. Or is it one
Yeah.
company QR code?
No. It's not can be one company QR code. The QR code is going to be specific to who the certificate is issued to. I
Okay,
give an
okay.
instance. If I wanted to issue you a certificate, what will validate that certificate came from me? Maybe I'm a company. Call me KodeCamp. What will validate that certificate came from me is because when I sign up on Certify as KodeCamp, Certify is going to give me a unique key. So I'm going to use that unique key to sign your details. Do you understand?
Yes, yes, please. I think I understand now.
Okay, so I've laid out some of the features that application are going to have. So what folder structuring do we think is going to be best for this project, and why do you think so? So this is a question I'm throwing to the floor now. Feel free to attempt it. Maybe. Okay, Ngozi, please go ahead.
I'm attempting, no.
Yes, please.
Okay, so looking at the details you've given of this app, I do not think it is so complex. When I mean complex, not too many features.
Okay.
So I think that the what's it now? But is it the level first
Layer first.
layer? Yes, looking for that word. The layer first approach to arranging the folder would be the best. So that's my own my own
Okay,
perspective.
that's a wonderful attempt. Wonderful attempt, Ngozi. Thank you very much. Ginika, do you want to go?
Yes, I agree with her. There's no really much no much features in the application. I think most of the work is just an API call and coding. No much details about that. So I go with her idea. I think layer first is okay. Thank you.
Okay. David, do you want to go next? Maybe say something different
I
and why
didn't
you think
really.
you should.
No, not even that. I didn't. I wasn't hearing when you were explaining about the folder structure. That's when I was leaving and coming back. So I don't really have answer to that now. But I will go with them layer first. Although I don't understand many of layer first, but I'll watch the video to. I will watch the video to understand the various structures you explained.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Well, I'm just gonna briefly go over it again, right? Since we are not much in the class. So I said there are two standards of folder structuring. One is feature first folder structuring, and the second is layer first folder structuring, right? The essence of following a folder structuring pattern is for number one, for consistency, number two, maintainability, number three, scalability. Okay, I mentioned the problem most developers have. Okay, when you are coding something right now at the moment, you are minding a lot of context. You know where things are, you know where things are, but we are human beings, we forget. Okay, so there is no guarantee that if you come back to your code in 2 months or 3 months time, if things are not well properly structured, you're gonna feel overwhelmed. Okay, so for production applications, this is not really ideal because, like, applications are regularly updated, people are implementing new features or fixing things. Okay, so the production application, the development is still very, very much active. So we need to have a consistent folder structuring pattern. Okay, so feature first folder structuring is used in large complex applications most of the times. Okay, you can use it in simple applications, but it's an overkill, but it is not bad. That's what I said. And layer first is used in very simple applications. If you use layer first in large applications, it is bad. Okay, it is bad because as the project grows, if the project has potential for growth, as the project grows, number of files, it's going to become harder and harder and harder to maintain. Okay, so I gave a use case for our application that you guys will build in. Okay, application is a very simple application. I outlined the features. We have authentication, account management, signing, and storage of QR codes, and image generation mainly, and storage of images. So you can see that this app, from the way I see it, it doesn't really have much features that will need to be that will be needing to be added to it, because it does one thing mainly: validate authenticity. Okay, so and like you said, Ngozi, it's the layer first approach that we're going to be using. And your reason is exactly the reason why we're using layer first approach. Okay. So to show you a quick practical example of what a layer first folder structure looks like. This is a certified project. Here we have our, well, this is a blank Flutter application. Okay. First thing you should do is clear all this out. This is not needed. Name your entry point widget. Call it certified application. This is your entry point widget. Okay. What's your entry point widget here? Okay. So you barely have to touch this main dot that far. Okay, so now we have authentication, which is sign in, sign up, and management of accounts. So because it's not much, you can really merge it into one feature named account management. Okay. And that's like
Sorry, sir, you said what? We met
while
with and what?
authentication, that's signing with account management. Okay.
Okay.
We have we have QR code generation. We have signing. So all these things are not really things that you have to separate into different folders, and that's the exact reason we'll be using layer first. So instead, what we'll be having is repositories. Now, repositories will represent our data source. Okay. Remember, we have to save certificates somewhere for the internet. Okay, and sometimes we need to download them. We need to download them and copy them. So any data that you need to save or get should be abstracted through the repository. Okay, we have our repositories. Now, repositories represents a concept, like I explained earlier, in layer first folder structuring. Okay, and now we have services. Now, what are services? Okay. Services are basically any entity or something, any logic or code that is not native to your application. You are not the one that wrote the code for it. You're basically accessing it through the internet. For instance, something like an API call, say you're using the Google Maps API. You're going to have to abstract that into Google Maps service, because the logic is handled by Google SDK. It is not you. So you have to abstract that away from your core application logic. Okay, so that's what services are. I remember we'll be using Firebase authentication, and we're using Firebase storage. And Firebase is like a third party, an external something to our application. It is not the core logic of our application. So we're going to be abstracting it through a service and using it from there. So that's what services are. Okay. And now we're going to have our UI layer. But of course, like I said, there is no strict rule that says you must name your folder a particular thing. Sometimes some people might name repositories, might just name it data. Okay. Sometimes they might name services API or something, right? Okay. And then they might name the UI views or something else, right? Okay. But name it what you can remember. Okay. I'm used to this, and this is what I use in places I've worked or work. So that's why I'm using it. You have your UI, you have your services. So now what you do is inside these repositories is where you place every data source you're getting. So for instance, I could have a certificate repository. Okay. Now this certificate repository, what it does is it provides certificates for me. Anytime I need a certificate, I'm going to find it through certificate repository. I could have a user, or let me call it account repository. Accounts repository. Now, what this repository does is provides me information on user account. If I need any information about user account, maybe I need to find an account or need to update an account, I'm going to have to access it through the accounts repository. And I can see how this helps us separate concerns. I wouldn't ever want to look for anything account related inside the certificate repository. Wow. Okay. Now, in the services, you could have authentication or authentication service. Now, this authentication service I could maybe, okay. In our previous class, I explained the concept abstraction, right? This is where it comes in handy. Before I start building the core logic of the application, maybe I've already decided that I know what my authentication service is going to do. I just want it to be able to sign in with user email and password. Authentication service. So here I just define the contract, the behavior I want, without providing the actual implementation, because maybe things are not ready yet, or I want to define implementation to different time. Maybe I want to assign it to any of you to implement, right? I just define what it should look like, how it would be. Now you can check out from this, pull this repository, check out and create an implementation authentication service. So I'm just going to abstract it. For instance, I'm going to have signing, and it's just going to pick string email password. This is my basic authentication service. You can see that here, actually in this interface, there is no call mentioned to Firebase authentication, anything. All those things are going to be put in place when we want to implement authentication service. Okay, so moving on, we could have what other service we'll be using? We'd have a storage service. Storage service. Now this, sorry, that's supposed to be a file, not a folder. That storage service. Now, in this storage service, we are not saying whether it is going to store it in Firebase storage, AWS buckets, or even the user's device. We just say this is a storage service. This is what storage service should look like. Okay. I name this called an interface storage service. So because I know Sorry about that. Because I know what a storage service should do, I know that it should save and get some type of data. Okay. I could also specify the contracts, just like I did in the authentication service. Now, one important thing to mention is that there's a dependency between these layers, and you need to understand it so that you don't have a situation where repositories is importing services and services is importing repositories, or repositories importing from the UI. There should be a clear separation of concern. You should know what depends on what before you actually start coding, right? So from what we can see here now, okay, we can see that we have the account repository, certificate repository, which abstracts the data source. But here we have services and we have the storage service. And the storage service, what it does is it actually stores and retrieves. So that should tell you that, of course, the services is depended on by repositories. Okay, and never in your code base should anything depend on your UI. Your UI should depend on other things. Sorry about that. So repository should never know about the UI. Okay, the repository layer should never know anything about your user interface. You should never import anything UI inside the repository and there is because it is the UI that would need it. It's the UI that needs to fetch data and display. Remember what a UI is? UI is basically user interface. It presents the data to the user. Because you're raising your hand. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Please, I wanted you to explain again the concept you mentioned. Just to explain better what you mean by your UI should. Okay, sorry, services or repositories should never depend on the UI, something like that.
Yes, you should never depend on your user interface. Let me
So,
say
sir, in
this
what
way.
way? In what way?
Okay, let me explain the practical example. This is authentication service, right? You should never import, and this authentication service is inside let's see, okay, inside authentication service file. You should never import when you import something like this UI, let's say this is a screen or some displays certificates screen. This should never happen in your code. Okay, because what this thing means now is that your authentication service knows about your user interface. That shouldn't be so. This means that authentication service, when you have an import statement, it means that the current file depends on things that are imported. Do you understand?
Oh, yes, I understand that part. Yes.
No. So you should never have import statements of UI inside authentication services. Okay? The only place you can have dependency of UI is with controllers, and I'm going to explain what controllers is, what controllers are rather. So basically, what a UI should do is present data, present the data to the user. Okay. Build the app such a way that even if you remove the UI app part, you can even run it in a command line or run it in a server as a backend application and expose it to REST API endpoints. Okay. So the way to do that is to make sure that no other concept depends on your user interface. I can't overemphasize this enough. Okay. Very, very, very important for maintainability. Separate UI from logic. That's what Mr. Ikes always says. Kinika, you're raising your hand.
Yes, sir.
Please
So
go
you're
ahead.
saying like it should look like as if it's a standalone application from the UI. That's
Exactly.
even if you take away the UI,
If
it
you
can
remove
still
the UI,
function on.
Perfect. I love your understanding, Denika. If you remove the UI and decide to take your code and run it in the command line, or maybe expose it through REST API endpoints on a backend, that can be used to build backend applications, right? Your application will still work and nothing will break. When you build that, you're on your way to building very, very highly scalable applications because the dependencies are well structured. Remember when I said about dependency, anytime you import something in a file, okay, check where that file is. If I want to import something from repositories, basically what I'm saying is that, Ginika, your hand is still up.
Sorry, please, I forgot.
Okay, so whenever you do this, what you should ask yourself is, which file am I currently in? Look at the top parent folder. What does the parent folder say according to your naming convention? I'm in the services, right? And I'm importing repositories. All this basically means is that my services depend on repositories. Now you have to ask yourself, is this what I want? Between services and repositories, which one should depend on which? Of course, repositories should depend on services. So you'll be having import statements of services inside your repositories. Okay, so that's that. So, and now in your UI, well, there's a second layer actually that I've not mentioned. I've mentioned, but I've not explained it. That's controllers. Controllers, right? I know some of you might know what a controller is. Does anyone know what a controller is?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, please tell us.
Okay. In very basic understanding is where you do your business logic that concerns the UI, like maybe form validation, um, like maybe declaring variables that can be used in different classes.
Beautiful.
Sorry, you said?
I said beautiful. You have an understanding of it.
Yeah, and just like, okay, like the middleman between even all this data service repository and the UI.
Wonderful.
So
That's it exactly. That's exactly. So what controllers are is controllers serve as like the middleman between the rest of your application and the UI. Hence the name controllers. Controllers most times are where you place your business logic. Okay. Most times. There are some exceptions, but most times controllers are where you place your business logic. So what a controller does is, or what it should do is, it should stand in between the user interface and the rest of the system, such that it should be the person that says maybe when a data changes in a repository, or maybe when something needs to change somewhere, should be the one that will tell the UI, okay, the state of the application has changed though. Therefore, redraw, update yourself so that the users can see. That's what a controller does. Hence the name controller. Controls, you can just say controls the user interface. Okay. That's a very, very basic way to say it, but that helps to understand it. Controls the user interface. So importantly, a controller is going to depend on, you are building a dependency map here. So follow me, guys. Controllers. Controllers. Controllers is going to depend on repositories and sometimes services. You know that sometimes it's not all services that will be dependent on that will be dependent on by the repositories. Sometimes I just want to route services directly to a controller. Okay. I don't know if I have get state management. Get state management. Okay, this project is still fresh. It's not installed yet. Okay, by the way, we'll be looking at get state management next week. Okay. Ngozi, please go ahead with your question.
So my question is about this get state management that you just mentioned now. So
what informed our choice of that particular package? Because I know there are other state management packages like the provider and there's this river pond or what. So what actually
Yeah.
informs that our choice of that state management? That was my question. I don't know if it's supposed to be for this class, but as you mentioned it, I just remembered it.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say I would like to, as much as I would like to use industry standard, right? So let me not say industry standard. The reason you'll be using guest management is because it is widely used. Okay, and it's assumed that when you come out, when you're certified, you'll be working on real world applications or maybe maintaining um applications. Most of these applications are using the get state management approach. Okay, I know there are others like there's Block, there's Riverpod. Riverpod is my personal favorite, right? But Get is widely used. If you go to pub.dev and you check the number of downloads of Get and compare it to the other approaches, you find that Get kind of beats them most times 10-1. Okay, so that's why we're
Okay,
using
sir.
Get. And Get has Get is innovative in the sense that in Flutter, one thing we deal with is context. Build context. Most times you have to pass build context around any small thing you want, but you must pass build context. But Get has a way of making it such that you don't have to pass build context around. And you know that build context is accessed only from the build function of a widget. So imagine when you need to navigate to somewhere. I need to call the navigation code from your controller. You have to pass build context from your UI your controller. It kind of creates this kind of dependency friction. Not saying it's bad, but sometimes build context may not always be available to you. So we are going to be using get route management too. So I hope that answers your question about get.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, please, sir. I wanted to ask, please. You said you're using Riverpod. Because me, I will not lie, I tried Riverpod. It's kind of complicated, really. That I had to go down to providers. That's when I started working. So I want to, because now I know provider, I know GetX. So if I'm just asking, please, because I know some companies will say they want Riverpod. Do you think that as I have this understanding of GetX, is still possible for me to learn provider? Like you make it easier? Because I was like, I won't go back to Riverpod again.
Wait, so I don't understand your question. Do you think it will make it easier to
Like
do what?
with the idea of provider and GetX, does it now make, if I go back to Riverpod, it will be simpler for me to understand? Unlike when I first looked
Um,
at it.
GetX is quite. I didn't say we are using Liverpool. I said Liverpool is my personal favorite first of all, and GetX is quite different. It's really really different from Liverpool. Okay, Liverpool is like okay. I don't know if any one of you has written Python code to build backend application by Python. Liverpool is like fast API. GetX is like Django. And so Fast API provides you with flexibility, but Django provides you with structure and scalability. So Riverpod is really powerful. I like the way it handles asynchronous program handling and everything. But GetX provides you with much more structure to your code. And most times structure is important. But no, having knowledge of GetX won't help you then Liverpool faster. Liverpool is quite different. The concepts are different. Understand? So hope that answers your
All
question.
right. Yes, it did. Thank you very much, please.
Okay. So we'll be so I was talking about controllers, right? Yes. Talking about controllers, the dependency of controllers. Remember I said repositories depend on services most times and controllers will depend on repositories and services. Okay, your repository, just like I said, nothing should depend on your UI. Okay, your repository or service should never depend on your controller. Okay, because the controller is like the middleman. The controller is going to be importing repositories into itself and updating the UI. Okay, so one way to map the dependency of controllers is to use interfaces, right? You provide the controllers, the UI via interfaces. I know I mentioned what interfaces are. We have an example here. Okay, so your UI will just call those methods on the controllers. And the controllers will just do its magic and update the UI. But this is as opposed to using set states. You can almost suppose use set states, but set state is not really nice, wonderful approach. Shouldn't be handling logic inside the UI. Okay, so and Get helps us do that. Actually, Get I don't have Get installed here currently. Well, actually, Get has super classes that you can extend for things like controllers and services. Okay, Get has GetX controller and Get has GetX service. Okay, so we'll be looking at that next week. So I said we'll be looking at Get management next week. Okay, so that's about controllers. So this is the basic architecture for that structure we're using for our certified application, right? Um, so I think this is the end of the class. Does anyone have any questions? If you have, feel free to ask, even if it's not related to the class today, maybe something we treated previously. Okay, this is the time to ask it.
Lisa, my hands are up. Oh.
Okay, Unica.
It's about this service class, because